you. I am Bree Zabrowski, co-founder and CEO of Apolla Performance Wear, here with my dear friend and fabulous co-host, Melissa McDaniel Grisham. And we are so excited to be back with Jennifer Milner of Bendy Bodies, and we're talking about how can we support our children emotionally by creating a safe space for them to inhabit outside of their extracurricular activities. I know that um, kids today are so overscheduled. We're having this problem in our house. We have two kids that are really active and involved, and we're going constantly. How do we create that safe space at home? So Jennifer's going to help us shed some light on that today. And Melissa, talk a little bit about Jennifer so our audience gets to know Jennifer as well.
We are so excited to have Jennifer back. Jennifer is a ballet coach and certified Pilates instructor. After a successful performing career, Jennifer became certified in Pilates. She's trained dancers from New York City Ballet, Kirov Ballet, American Ballet Theater, San Francisco Ballet, Royal Ballet, and many, many more. She's the co-founder of Bendy Bodies Podcast, a podcast devoted to athletic artists with hypermobility issues. She is also, I don't know how she has time for all this. She is she's a member of the International Association of Dance Medicine and Science, Dance Medica, and Doctors for Dancers, and serves on the advisory board for Minding the Gap. Jennifer, how in the world do you have time for all this?
I ask myself that many times a week, actually. But when you're really passionate about something, it's not so much of a chore. Or it doesn't even feel like work. So I find things that I'm passionate about, and I just like to do them.
That's I think how we all like power through sometimes is
Mm-hmm.
you love what you do, so it makes it a little easier to swallow. But Jennifer, you've done every aspect of this. You're a parent, you're a teacher, you've danced yourself, like you've done it all. So and you work with a lot of performance athletes, right? So
Mm-hmm.
how instrumental to an athlete support let me rephrase, how instrumental is a healthy support system to a performance athlete's overall success? That's what I wanted to ask.
Right. Well, I mean, I think it's incredibly important. There's that triad in a dancer's life. There's the dancer, and we're talking pre-professional mostly, so younger, underage. There's the dancer, there's the parent, and there's the coach. And whether we're talking about sports or dance or ice skating or whatever it is, that triad has to have some sort of healthy relationship within it. And the dancer can have emotional stress for a variety of reasons, but finding that support, it's hard enough being a kid, and then it's even harder being a teenager as you're going through puberty. But to be going through that on
Yeah.
a large stage in front of teachers every day, on the competition stage, on the large competition stage, summer intensives, all of that, it's incredibly stressful. So having an emotional support team or a great system is really key, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and some are not that lucky, right? So it's really important if you have a child that's passionate about something, that you figure out how to foster that for their own, their health as well as your own.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a fine line between pushing a child to reach their potential and burning them out completely, or even just pushing way too hard and too much, especially at the different ages, right? Like we know there's a threshold there. What are some of the signs that that line has been crossed by parents or guardians, that they've pushed too much?
Well, so first of all, just a reminder, I'm not a medical health professional. So I don't hand out medical advice or say that I am an expert on any of this. I say that I'm an advocate for it. And having been in the parental spot, but also having been in the dancer spot and thinking about the things that I wish I had gotten from my parents, or that I did get that I appreciated. And then being in that unique position as a private coach, working with the dancers, it's a very different dynamic than working in the studio in a group setting. So a lot of times the dancers will talk to me, and I get to see a more vulnerable side of them
Yeah.
than perhaps other people do. So when I look at those things, I think it's easier to see when that line has been crossed if you're not one of that triad. So
Uh,
sometimes that objective eye makes it
yeah.
easier to see. But a big flag for me as a parent is there reluctance for them to go to dance class? Are they tired? Are they complaining about their stomach hurting? Do they always seem to be injured or talking about injuries? And one of two things are happening. Either they really are tired or sick or injured, in which case let's look at what's happening and causing them to be this way and how can we make this more sustainable, or there are some psychological aspects going on and there's a reluctance to go. And that's not necessarily something, to me as a parent, again, not as a mental health professional, that's not something that to be pushed through. That's something to sort of be examined and say,
Yeah.
hey, I notice that every time Monday and Wednesday come up, those are your dance days, you don't feel good, you have a tummy ache, or you don't want to go, or hey, kiddo, we've got this big competition this weekend and you say that you don't think you can go. Like, what's happening? Let's talk about that. And I think giving the kids space to have those conversations and not assuming what the answer will be, but also not judging what the answer will be. So if they say, I just don't want to go, then for me as a parent saying, well, you made a commitment, so you have to go. That's not helpful, because then they're not going to want to tell you, right? I mean, it is true. They did make a commitment. So let's problem solve that together. Well, when we made this commitment, you seem to be interested in it and you seem to be excited about it. What's changed? Right? So trying to talk about it from an us point of view rather than a you versus them point of view.
I love
It's
that. And
helpful.
that is so much harder to do than you think it is, right?
It is. Yeah, absolutely it is.
I'm thinking as right now, the moments I failed in that as a parent already, and mine are 6 and 9.
That's a great segue into my next thought. I mean, I'm not. I am a parent now that I've gotten married. I now have a son who's 14, about to be 15, and have worked with kids, of course, my whole life as a dance educator. But as a parent who's out there listening, that goes, "Uh-oh, I think I may have crossed that line a couple of times."
Yeah.
Pushing them out, with the foot out the door when they weren't really ready to go. What's your advice to them? Like, is it too late to minimize the damage, or what do you suggest that they do immediately if they've realized, ooh, I might have crossed the
Yeah,
line?
like, and how hard do you push that conversation if you're like trying to open up this dialogue and they're like, nothing, nothing, nothing? How hard do you push?
Well, I don't have an answer on how hard do you
Right.
push, because I've probably screwed it up. My kids are 15 and 17. They're both dancers, and so I've had way more opportunities to mess up than you have. So on that schedule. I think the hardest thing for me, not the hardest, but one of the hardest things as a parent, but the most important for me, is to apologize to my kids and to acknowledge when I have done something that was careless or not taking their thoughts into account or just plain wrong. You know, um, parents aren't just in relationship with their child, they're in relationship with the teacher as well,
Yeah.
and the studio. And there's a very fragile sort of power sense there, because you are the teacher's boss in that you pay their salary, right? You hire them. But when you sign that contract and go in with them, you are agreeing to submit yourself to their authority. So you're
Mm,
paying someone to have authority over you and your child. So there's a
mm,
very strange, a lot of parents say, I don't want to tell the teacher something because I don't want them to take it out on my child. So there, even though you should feel free to say something to the teacher, whatever it might be, if you say, well, my daughter just doesn't want to come to dance today, you're afraid they'll get mad and be like, well, then she's just lazy and doesn't want to work and I'm not going to cast her. So you worry about the conversations you'll have with the teacher. And sometimes we start to worry about that more than we worry about our relationship with our child. And we think we don't want to upset the teacher. We don't want to make them unhappy. We don't want them to make them think poorly of our child, because we want to give our child space to succeed. So we may tell our child, just, suck it up today and we'll deal with it later. Or I don't believe you, or we may not even say I don't believe you, but I think you can do it. So come on, let's just go do it.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, we may be like, you know what? I probably shouldn't have pushed you. I probably should have taken 5 minutes to say, hey, what's going on? Let's figure out, can you really go today? Can you not go today? So I think if you feel like you've crossed that line, giving space for the child to talk is going to be huge, and making them feel like they are able to talk without there being repercussions. and not repercussions like you're punished, go to your room, but repercussions like, well, then I'm just going to pull you from dance, right? Like, but letting them say, hey, I don't like this. Like, this class is too much. Or on Wednesdays to have tap and jazz, and I always get a big assignment in English. It's just too much. Or this teacher makes me uncomfortable, right? Or there could be, I don't like being in that trio. Those two girls are mean to me. Like, you don't know what it is and you don't know what's going on until you give them that space to have that conversation. And I don't always do that. I fail at that myself. So when I do fail, having the humility to be able to go to them and say, hey, mommy failed, mommy messed up, what can I do better next time, right?
I love that. And I think too, I want to recognize this because I think this is a big one. Like, ego plays a part too as a parent. Like, these people are judging my parenting. So if I don't make my kids show up to dance, like, I'm gonna look bad, right? So
Right.
I'm going to look like I don't have control over my household and my kids and my whatever. And you worry about that judgment as well. So
Absolutely.
I hear you saying prioritize, try to remember to prioritize your child over all those other things and the health and well-being of your child. And of course we all want that as parents. We love our children more than anything, but that gets lost sometimes in all the demands and expectations of society. So I want to call that out and recognize that as well.
Yeah, and
I think go ahead.
Jen.
I think there's space to say, hey, like, we have made this commitment. Let's try to finish this out. And if it is something that, you really have made that commitment, they're not in a physically threatened position, right? They don't have a big injury or something, and say, hey, let's finish this and then let's talk about it. And then when the next year's registration comes around or the next semester comes around, you can say, hey, you really loved this for the first month. And then you didn't love it, or you loved taking the classes, but every time we had to go to a convention, it was like pulling teeth. Or you loved going to the conventions, but you hated going to the classes. So let's talk about what the expectations will be for this semester. And do you think that it's something that you're interested in doing, right? Because we have to know we're going to be in it for this amount of time.
I had this parent. I loved this parent. This parent had a really great grip on their household, their kids, and it wasn't always perfect, but I love that they did this. So every year at the end, they would go through the competition year. And every year at the end of the year, after the last competition, they would take time as a family to sit down and talk and go, how did you feel? Where are you at? Take the temperature and not just assume that this kid wanted to do the exact same thing this next year, and, reestablish what the commitment is for the family and for the kid themselves. And I just thought it was it's such a small, but big at the same time thing that you can do to really, put that in their hands and make that their own decision. Right.
Absolutely. And I think the time to do that is right after it ends. And I also encourage teachers to do that as well. I know it's really hard to ask for feedback, but as a studio owner, I would send out a survey, make it anonymous at the end of the year and say, what did you love about this year? What did you think was too much? What was not enough? Because when you're coming back in the next year, you've had a rest, you're ready for the fresh season. But if you talk about it right when everybody's exhausted, they can be like, 6 weekends in a row was too much, or could we do more of this kind of class? And I think the same with your children. When you talk about it right at the end and say, okay, looking back, what did you think? How did you love it? I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. For those of you who are just joining us, we are talking to Jennifer Milner about how we can support our children by creating a safe space to inhabit outside of extracurricular activities. This is an important conversation. Jennifer is speaking from a perspective of an educator and a parent and a dancer, and just a wealth of knowledge that she is coming with. If you're watching, please like, share, and subscribe, regardless of where you're watching or listening from. We would love to have this episode shared as widely as possible. I want to talk about what this emotionally safe space looks like, Jennifer. So what does it look like for a performance athlete? Describe what you would think from your perspective is an ideal safe space for them.
I think one where, as a parent, I want to make a space that the children are going to feel heard, right? That they feel like they can talk to me and they can have those discussions. I want to give them opportunities. So I want to provide them with opportunities, see what they say yes to, see what they say no to. But sometimes kids come and say, hey, can I try this? And you're like, oh, no. It's just one more
Totally.
thing.
Totally.
We do this, right? Right. But say, what are you interested in about that? Like, what excites you?
Yeah.
If you want to try ice skating, let's go to open skate for a month first. And
Yeah.
if you still think it's fun, then let's try ice skating, you know. So we want to provide them with opportunities. And a lot of times it's hard for kids to ask for things. It's hard for my kids to ask for things because they're afraid I'm going to say no. Because when I'm like so frantic and hectic, I usually do say no. So I've learned that when they ask for something, I need to listen, and I need to say, what are they really asking for? And how can I provide the opportunity to say yes without just piling meaningless stuff on there? So if they ask for opportunities to take more privates, well, let's talk about that. What interests you in that? Well, Ashley takes all these privates and she's really good. Okay, so you want to improve. Okay. Or, well, everybody takes privates and I feel stupid because I don't. Like, it's the cool thing to do. Okay, that's different. Well, I want to compete at YAGP and I can't do it unless I take private. So figuring out what it is that they're seeking from that might help you provide those opportunities in a way that fits your time and financial budget, right?
Or not, right? Or not.
Or
Like
not. Like if
the
they say all the
motivation
cool
is,
kids do,
yeah.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. We want to select appropriate opportunities. We don't want to just do everything, like you said. And we want to make sure that the opportunities that we are giving them, especially if you are on a tight financial budget and who isn't in the dance world, are the best use of your time and your money. So one competition or convention may not be as beneficial as another one. You may get more scholarship opportunities, and if you have to pick and choose, that's a great way to do it. Looking at summer programs, is that the best way for us to spend $6,000 to $10,000 that summer? Or should we keep her home and let her do privates at home and let her advance that way? What is she really looking for? Is it a summer camp experience? Let's send her away for a week to church camp. Like, let's figure out, and how can we make the best of those opportunities? We want to make it fun and we want to make it enjoyable as a parent. So we have to be really careful. I have to be really careful that I'm not like, great, let's get in the car and I'll drive you again. Here's mom, I've been sitting in the parking lot waiting for 15 minutes for you guys to get out. You never get out on time. That's a great comment to make to the studio owner. My kids never get out on time, but your kids don't have any, they don't have any sway over that. So making it something that doesn't feel like a burden and a chore to you is so helpful to them. Those Saturday mornings at 7:00 when you get up to go play soccer in the middle of the rain, that sounds terrible, but soccer's outdoors and that's what you signed up for, right? So making it feel fun and enjoyable to them. And if it's not fun and enjoyable, well, then let's talk about why, right? So maybe inviting the whole dance class over for a pizza party. I love when my kids invite their dance friends over. I want them to bond. I want them to feel like they're connected, because that really helps in the dressing room as well. So it feels like a burden, but you're really investing in their emotional safe space, right? You want to give them a love of the activity. So again, not feeling like a burden, to buying DVDs of Giselle or subscribing to Marquee TV or whatever you can do to let them see outside stuff, showing them that you want to see it too and that you love it as well. You want them to feel that. You want to, I think it's so important emotionally to emphasize effort and improvement for dancers rather than achievement. So just saying, I love watching you dance is so much better than saying, I love it when you get it right. Right. And just saying this, seeing you do that, seeing you in this situation makes me happy. I'm so happy for you. Right. Rather than, wow, you nailed that. Let's hope you can do it again. Or just, I'm so proud of how hard you worked to be able to get that. We really want to encourage the effort. And when I do that, and when I see my parents do that with their daughters, it's night and day. When I have parents come in with, a lot of parents sit in and stay the whole time I'm working, and they'll come in and be like, she needs to get her arabesque higher, and she needs to get her quad turn better. And like, she has this laundry list. And I'm like, well, what do you want to work on? She's like, well, I really want to work, and mom's like, no, she needs to do this and this and this. And I'm like, well, let's
and
talk
you're
about
like,
yes, let's talk about that. why are you saying that? What do you feel? And so having that laundry list of things to hit is not nearly as helpful as encouraging the effort behind it.
Mhm.
Help them make their own decisions. I think for an emotional safe space, choice and autonomy are so important, and we're trying to give our kids autonomy in life, and dancers feel like they have no choice in their lives, and they don't. Put this hand on the bar, do these steps to this music right now.
Yeah.
Right? So they don't have a lot of choice. So I try to give them as much choice as I can. I'm like, do you want to exercise with the red cones or the blue cones today?
Mhm.
And they're like, yay, a choice. Right? So try to give them that autonomy and try to build space in there for them to learn how to make their own decisions. I have told my kids, if they come to me and say, I can't dance tonight. I am emotionally done. I can't do it. I'm like, okay,
Mm.
that's great. And I will call the studio and say, yep, she can't be there tonight. And I trust them to not abuse that, and they trust me to believe them when they say that. Now, if they say that once a week for 6
Right.
weeks,
You're right.
we
Yeah.
need to talk about that. But if they say it once a semester, that's different. And letting them listen to themselves and say to me, Mom, I can't, or Mom, I'm injured, I have to sit out center. Great, thank you for telling me. Let's go tell them. So
Mhm.
giving them the support, and of course they're 15 and 17, they're older, right?
Right.
But giving them the space to start to listen to their body and recognize what's going on and trust that you will listen to them is huge. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we can do for our children for that safe space. And then finally, I guess I would say, let them know that you're on their side. Because again, it's a triad and it may not always be clear, but let them know that you are their biggest fan and that you are there also to advocate for them. You don't expect a 10-year-old to walk into a teacher's office and say, I was uncomfortable when so-and-so talked to me this way.
100%.
Mhm.
You have to do that for them. And they have to know you're not going to make them step up and do something like that.
Yeah.
Right. That's not age appropriate or not,
Right.
developmentally appropriate for
Right.
them to do. Yeah, for sure. That's such good advice. And I know uh I have failed as a teacher many times of even encouraging, my parents to be able to do things like that, especially when we talk about not coming to class or sitting
Mm-hmm.
out or injury.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this constant pressure from my end, I feel like wrongly, to say, okay, you're supposed to be helping me push this kid through. Like they need to dance. And I think that we
Right.
make space for that as teachers to go, okay, she knows her kid or he knows his child, so I'm going to trust that they're making the right decision, and this is not just a smokescreen to
Right.
not dance or to step out on your responsibilities.
Well, and if they do call in consistently, have a conversation with the parent and say, hey, I noticed they haven't been here 2 classes a week for the past 5 weeks. What's going on? How can I help? Rather than, why aren't you making your kid go to class? Which I'm sure none of us say, right? But rather than saying, you've got to do this, we need this, this is really important. They can't let the team down. Say,
Yeah.
hey, what's going on? I'm concerned. How
Mhm.
can I support you guys? What needs to happen?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about parents and I guess the dynamic between parent and teacher. Because
Mm-hmm.
I have had parents actually come to me and say, okay, you're not pushing hard enough. My child performs better when they're in a high stress environment. I had a parent this year say, I pull back on the positive comments because she thinks she has it all together. She needs more. Yeah. I mean, she needs more. She didn't say negative criticism, but it's basically like she needs more critiques. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you tell her what she's doing well, she doesn't think she has to do anything any better. And it's like, okay, so did I just get the request to push back on positive reinforcement? Like, I don't think I've ever had
I have
that.
officially heard it all.
Yeah, let's add it to the end of the list. So is that a thing? Is there ever, I guess, in your experience, have you seen the type of child that thrives in the heavy
Criticism.
pressure environment?
The pressure cooker environment.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, we see lots of kids who thrive in that environment, but at some point they're going to let off steam somewhere, right? And those are the kids that usually do really well early on in the competitions when they're 9, 11 years old and retire when they're 14.
Yeah.
And then when they're 22, they write a book about it.
Yeah.
So you'll see, I think, and again, I'm not a mental health professional, but my experience has been that I see short-term success and gains from that. But we're not just shaping a great dancer, we're shaping humans. So I think the longer term solution and the dancers who thrive and who succeed and have amazing careers are the dancers who get excellent instruction and positive reinforcement. And I think that there's a way you can hold a dancer to a standard of excellence without speaking negatively to them. You can say, this is not where it should be, but I know how to get you there. So you're not just saying that's terrible. You're saying, I know that this can be better, and here's how we're going to do it. Let's work on it. I give corrections all the time in class. And sometimes when a class finishes, and again, I teach pre-professionals, so very high level, or I teach professionals. And when the combination's done, if it was terrible, I go, well, that was terrible. And they all laugh because they know I'm not judging them. I'm like, that experience was terrible. Let's talk about it. Let's see what happened and went wrong. But I'm not saying you're bad and you're awful. And I won't say that was terrible to a group of 12-year-olds. Right? I'll say, all right, guys, what do we think about that? And if they're like, well, that was terrible. Okay, let's talk about that. What did you think was wrong with it? Now, what did you think was right with it? So if you can point out 10 things that were wrong, tell me something that was right. And if you can't think of anything that was wrong, well, let's talk about that. You feel like the combination's too easy? Because I think that you didn't quite close your fifths enough. So perhaps we could work on that. Yeah. So it depends on the class level for sure, the developmental level for sure. But I have yet to see negative reinforcement be successful long-term. I don't think the studies bear that out. And I do think that you can be too positive in that you teach with a sort of everybody gets a trophy mentality, right? I do think that is a thing where we can't just tell everybody how beautiful they are and they're fantastic butterflies, although we need a lot of that when they're younger. But I do think that we can teach from you guys are beautiful. You're amazing. Sophie, I love the way you did that pirouette. Natalia, your adagio looked fantastic. Let's talk about the things we can fix now. Right? So I think that we can lift the children up and give them that positive feedback, and at the same time hold them to that higher standard of excellence. There is a way to do both.
Yeah. And what about parents? How do they hold themselves accountable for, maintaining that safe space? Because how do you rein yourself in as a parent?
I think it goes back to your relationship with your coach, with your teacher.
Yeah.
Do you have a trusting relationship with the teacher? And if you don't, what do you want to do about that? If you don't trust the teacher, if you don't like the teacher, if you don't think they're a good teacher, let's reevaluate why you're there. If you trust the teacher, you like the teacher, but your child is struggling, let's have a conversation with the teacher, right? Let's sit down and discuss it with them. But hopefully parents don't feel the need to jump in as a coach because they're getting what they need from the coach. And if they're not, then let's look at why they are. So I would hope that as a parent, if I thought that my daughters weren't getting enough of something, I know I could go to their teachers and say, they need more of this. How can I support you in this? Should I get them outside classes? Can I help you find time for this or that? What can I do to be part of the solution rather than coming to the teacher and just complaining about it? But I don't think it's different for me because I'm also a dance teacher. So my kids, unfortunately, have to listen to what kind of comments and criticism I have. But to be fair, or to be truthful, they rarely want me to give them critiques. They don't want. And so if they come out into the car and they're like, man, I could not get my en dedans pirouettes today. I'm like, well, did you think of this? And they're like, don't try to solve it. I just want to complain right now.
They just want to talk to mom. Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of parents want to do that. So when the kids get in the car and they're like, oh, I was so bad, I was awful. And the parents are like, you weren't bad, you weren't awful. If you were, the teacher would be calling me, let them talk. Give the teenagers especially space to talk and process. and then just reflect back to them. It sounds like you had a really hard day. It sounds like you were really struggling. Was there anything that you enjoyed from it? Do you feel like you did anything well? And not try to fix it. And I think that the parental coaching comes in a lot because we're anxious for our kids and because we're trying to fix it for them. And we're like, hey,
Yeah.
I noticed your
Yeah.
arabesque's gotten a little lower.
Mhm.
That's not helpful.
Yep. Oh God, I feel like this is spotlighting all my failures.
Well, I'm speaking
I
from a
need to do
position of
over.
failure myself, so.
For those just joining, I am Bree Zabrowski with Apolla Performance Wear, here with my fabulous co-host, Melissa McDaniel Grisham. This is Beyond the Steps. This is the show we talk about social issues that are impacting the dance industry, anything from racism, gender inequity, sex abuse and prevention, nutrition, psychology, and of course, dance medicine and science. We're chatting today with Jennifer Milner about how we can support our children emotionally by creating a safe space for them to have outside of their extracurricular activities. We've just been talking about how important that relationship is between the parents and the educator or director or teacher. And it's a great segue into, a really hot button topic in the dance world, which is, Jennifer, do you think it's problematic that we often see parents being kept on the outside of what's happening in training? How important is it to bring those parents into the fold? And I'm gonna give my opinion to this question. Yes, I think it's hugely important for parents to be brought in rather than be kept out. I know it's very controversial. You look at some of the conventions that are trying to get the parents out of the room by putting fees on those parent observer passes, and the dance networks on social media are always talking about how complaining about the parents and keeping them as far away from the studios as possible. And I think there was one point earlier in my career that I probably might have agreed with that thought process. And I know it's not always easy and the lines get blurred, but as I've grown and matured and learned, I think it's just essential. So what are your thoughts on it?
Well, you're right. It is a hot button topic. And I am always going to err on the side of protection for the child.
Yeah.
When you look at what was the movie, what was the documentary that was out about the gymnastics issue?
Oh, it's horrific. Yeah, I forget the name
A
of it.
or whatever it was called. Yeah, Athlete A, I think. And that a lot of that came from the parents being shut out and not being allowed to be in there at all. Like
and an immense amount of trust, right?
Yes, and an immense amount of trust, right? Yeah. And I think it's so hard because I see both sides of it. As a teacher, the last thing I want is a parent watching every class and coming up to me and going, "Why aren't you pushing so and so hard on this?" Or "Why isn't that happening? How come my child hasn't been cast as this and that?" You don't want the parents having the reins of the studio decision making. And having too much access and too much information can have that effect. In addition, having the parents be too visible and watching too much can have an effect on the dancers. The children will be constantly distracted by seeing the parents and dancing for the parent, or worried, and the parent might be like snapping and pointing and like trying to talk to them without talking, to get them to focus. Again, younger dancers, the older parents or older dancers probably just roll their eyes. But we need a place where we can do our work as teachers. We need that space. At the same time, there has to be transparency. And with everything that has happened in the convention world over the past few years, I don't think the issues of mental and physical sexual abuse are new to the dance world. I think they're just coming to light. Mm-hmm. And I think that we need to have transparency there. And if there's fear that's not wanting us to be transparent, we need to examine why and what it is that we're concerned about the parents seeing. So I don't know about parents having to pay, I'm not super into the competition world, but having to pay an observation fee and such. And I can understand not wanting a bunch of parents standing around when there's a limit to how many people can be in the room, that sort of thing. But perhaps, cameras would be helpful, and being streamed to a space where the parents can observe and listen if they want to, because a lot of it is listening and hearing how the teachers talk to the dancers and hearing some of the really appalling things that people sometimes say to the kids. I wouldn't want my children at a space where I don't trust the teachers and don't trust them to be alone with them. At the same time, the best teachers know it's really not a good idea to be alone with the dancer anyway. So if you're rehearsing a private, that door should be open, or there should be a lot of windows. And so for the teacher's protection as well, I
Yeah.
think, and I think the key to all of this, I think the key to so many issues between parents and teachers is communication.
Communication. You're absolutely right.
Communication. And sometimes we're afraid to say why, right? We're afraid to explain our casting because we don't want to hurt the parents' feelings and say your daughter just wasn't ready for it. But if we can say that and say, I didn't feel she was ready, I would love to work with her on these steps and then help her get ready for something bigger next year, then everybody would be happy, or at least happier. Being able to communicate and say, parents, you're too much. Step back 2 feet, right?
Yes.
Just having the freedom to be able to say that, say, I love your hearts. I love that you want to be in here and watching. I need you to pick one night a week to be standing in the doorway, and y'all can rotate or whatever. But feeling the freedom to be able to say that, and the parents not be like, well, they can't tell me what to do. I paid for, it goes back to that power dynamic.
I think it's achievable to have both. And I will say this was something in the last program I ran, I think we did really well, right? We had that open door policy, but we had those meetings multiple times a year where the expectations were laid out, that like on my end, it was very organized and presented, and they knew exactly what to expect. And the ability to say, like, my decisions are my decisions, and I am making the decisions for the good of the whole, right? If you want to talk about it, you want to question it, we can have that dialogue, but it will be a meeting, and it's not going to necessarily change the way things are, right? Like, but making a space for them to feel heard, and still setting your boundaries as an instructor. And it's not easy. And by no stretch is it easy, but it's so important. And I think that is really what's getting lost, especially as you said, in this day and age where there's so many things being brought to light. I think it takes a village, and we need to all work together. So 100% agree with you.
I have to hop in from a teacher perspective. I am in the competitive world on a almost daily basis still, and that all is amazing. It sounds great. You're like, yes, open door policy, transparency, talk to the parents. That is so much harder.
It is.
Said than done. Because to your point, Jennifer, the first thing you get is, well, I pay you. And you're going to do what I say do, or I'm going to go down the street and I'm going to pay Sarah Jane.
It's ultimately why I stepped out of teaching and into the director spot exclusively, because it was so much work to maintain that part of it. It's a lot. It's a lot.
And I think that there is pressure in the competition world. I don't teach much in the competition world, but I have several high-level competition dancers. I think there's this vicious cycle of the parents picking whatever school pushes them the hardest and does the most competitions, because they think that that's going to help their child achieve, right? They're not being mean and trying to exhaust their child, but they think that's what's best. So then that school is like, I have to keep doing it. I have to keep doing more. The other schools feel like they need to do more. And then that parent goes, oh, well, that school's doing more now. And so they go over there again, because they honestly think that that's what's best and that's what they should be doing. Yeah. So the schools keep adding, 22 routines for each competition or for each child at a competition.
Yeah.
And 4 privates a week and this and that, not because they're just love booking up every hour of your day, but because they feel like that's what the system is requiring at this time. And I can imagine you feel held hostage to some of the parents and to that sort of whimsical, we know those studio hoppers that will change studios every year and say, well, this is my right and this is what I'm going to do. And so you're like, okay.
Yeah.
And then you face the mob mentality of, there's one parent that does that, but then that parent gets 2 parents, and then those parents get 2 parents, and then next thing you know, your studio is cleared out, your competition team is cleared out by 50% and 40% of those people were totally happy before
Right.
jumped in and decided
Right.
that she was going to, blow the whistle on everything. And it's such a fine line to walk. And I mean, everything that we're talking about is totally right and correct. I just really wanted to lift up, especially for those dance educators who are out there listening, going, yeah, okay. Okay,
Yeah.
And
wow,
that's totally
That's
fair.
fair. That's
Yeah.
fair.
But
yeah,
I do think again that communication is key. And I have seen some success with competition studios that have regular meetings, even if it's just once a semester, with the parents, and at the beginning of the semester say, here's what we're going to do. And we're going to cut back on this, and we're not going to do so many of this. And here's why. Here's the science behind it. And they have someone like me bring in those research notes, right? That says studies show that if we do less, we actually do better. I'm charging you more money this semester because I'm bringing in a conditioning expert, and we're going to take out this 6th jumps and turns class of the week so that they can do that instead.
Yeah.
So here's why they're getting less jumps and turns, because this is going to help. And having that communication, saying, please trust me for this year, and let's see how we do, and we can reevaluate it later. But here's why I'm doing it. And I think having solid information behind them, then it makes the parents, I would think it would make the parents feel like we're all in this together. We're along for the ride. We have bought in that we're doing less, but we trust it's going to be okay. And we can't wait to see the fruits of that,
Yeah. And also for those people that think it's hard, I think we need to dig deeper and ask ourselves, why does this feel hard to me? Is it because I don't feel like I should have to answer to the parents? Is it because I don't like conflict and I'm afraid of the conflict that could come from the parents? Like, what is the main motivation for am I doing something that I don't want people to see, right? Like, what is that main motivation for keeping that separation between you and the parents, and then break that down a little bit? Like, what can I do to overcome? If it is, I don't like conflict, okay, what can I do to minimize that and still bring them in, right? So there's some different motivations there too.
There are. And again, with the communication, something that I do with Minding the Gap, we do a dance teacher mental health series on Zoom. And one of the workshops is clear communication, and learning what kind of communicator you are, and how to communicate with the parents, and how to deal if you don't like conflict, how to deal with it. I think at the end of the day, parents and coaches are both terrified of messing up. We're terrified of doing the wrong thing. We're both trying to figure it out as we go along. We're trying to make good choices, and it's really hard, and it's impossible to be perfect for both sides. It's impossible to be a perfect parent. It's impossible to be a perfect dance parent, and it's impossible to be a perfect teacher. So we just have to have grace with each other and assume that people are acting from the best possible motives.
Yeah.
Right. What are some of the biggest challenges, Jennifer, if a child does not have an emotional safe space outside of their extracurricular activities? What have you noticed of students who may not have these things, the elements of a safe space that you listed earlier? What are some of the effects of that?
Well, speaking as a private instructor, like in Pilates and ballet coaching, being unaffiliated with any specific school, I think the dancers talk to me more. And when I see them, the ones that don't have that safe space, I hear them talking about the pressure, and I hear them making excuses, or saying, well, my mom's just really hard, but she really loves me, and she really wants the best for me. And so you see that fear of even being able to express how they feel in that. And they're going to find an outlet one way or another. I have many dancers with eating disorders, some who are in clinics. I have dancers who have issues with self-harm. I have dancers who have been on suicide watch. It's a pressure-filled situation. And I think if we can't give them that emotional support, they're going to find an outlet somewhere else, whether it's acting out or sneaking out of the house, or something that's going to be more self-harmful and self-medicating.
Yeah. I want to go to homework, Melissa. Are we ready for homework?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So Jennifer, as you know, we like to give our guests homework, just a way that they can make progress related to the topic we're discussing. And so what is your one homework challenge for everybody watching, or that will be watching, for them to accomplish and make progress in the next 7 days?
That is a great question. And I would say whether you're a dance educator or a parent, I would say try to ask more open-ended questions and give your kids space to start to feel like they can share with you. As a parent and as a dance teacher, I think it's really helpful. As a dance teacher, sometimes I walk into class and I say, how's everybody feeling? Good? Great, let's go. And I don't give them space to actually tell me. I tell them what I expect them to say, right? I'm like, you are good. I don't have time for this. So give them that open space to have or open-ended questions, especially as a parent. How are you feeling today? What did you think of dance? Rather than saying, was dance good? Right? What did you think of dance? What was something that you learned that you really loved? And let them just start to talk. And then if they don't want to talk, say, hey, I'd love to chat with you about this sometime. When's a better time? Well, I'm just hungry. Okay, we'll talk after you eat. And I think if you can do that, if you can ask open-ended questions and be patient and not expect a certain response, you'll start to have that safe space that your kids can talk to you.
I love that. Manage our own expectations as well, which is not easy. So thank you for that. So you have your homework from Miss Jennifer, and from us, we always have the same homework, but it's important homework. It's Take That Steps Initiative course. It's a online curated course. Every module has been curated by experts in their field. It's a course that you can take at your own pace, and it's going to give you modules on racism in dance, gender inequity, sex abuse and prevention, nutrition, psychology, and of course, dance medicine and science. You can take this course absolutely free, and we're going to pop that in the chat for you. Jennifer, how can people get a hold of you? Do you consult with studios? Do you just talk a little bit about what you can offer and how people can get a hold of you?
Well, I do one-on-one coaching mostly. I do it on Zoom as well, but I also do workshops with studios and with companies. And I do long-term coaching like for a specific performance or something along those lines too. So I fly everywhere, but I also do a lot of Zoom, and happy to chat and to see what I can do to help dancers. You can reach me at Jennifer Milner, Milner on Instagram. I definitely answer all of that. And my website is jennifer-milner.com.
Yeah, perfect. And say the Instagram one more time.
Jennifer.Milner.
Got it. So that's your homework. You have your homework from Jennifer. You have your homework from us, and you'll reach out to Jennifer. She is a wealth of knowledge. And of course, we're going to listen to that Bendy Bodies podcast. It is one of my faves. So congratulations on your success with all of that as well.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for being here with us. It has been a pleasure as always, just a wealth of knowledge. I think this is going to be a very popular episode with parents and teachers. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys for having me back on.
And of course, thank you, Bree, for always being here, my trusted co-host. It's an amazing honor to do this with you. So thank you so much as well.
Thank you. Have a good Friday, everybody.
Yes, absolutely. BTS. Beyond the Steps, that's what I call it for short, it's going to be a podcast. It's coming. So make sure that you are looking at all the places where you get your podcast from and find us. Make sure that you like and share this episode and all the others, which you can find at Apolla Performance and at TP Dance Creations on a lot of different social media platforms, including Facebook and YouTube. We will be back next week, Friday, 3:30 on YouTube and Facebook as well. So until then, please continue your journey beyond the steps. We will see you next week.
Bye.